This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From the New York Times, Russia-Ukraine War Summary. Ukraine's President Zelensky is scheduled to virtually address the U.S. Congress today, ostensibly as part of a larger effort to garner more support for Ukraine and against Russia internationally. The UN's official numbers say about 3 million people have fled Ukraine and entered neighboring countries as refugees so far. Slovakia has announced it will be kicking out 3 Russian diplomats due to alleged espionage. Polish, Czech, and Slovenian prime ministers have visited Kyiv to show support for Ukraine's government. The top Wikipedia editor in Russia has been arrested for, quote, distributing fake anti-Russian information, end quote, which is a euphemism for posting real information that contradicts the Russian government's fake information. And the EU is piling on new sanctions for Russian luxury goods, steel, and iron. There's been some back and forth about the possibility that China may be helping Russia economically in the near future, but accusations by the U.S. that Russia has requested armed drones and other military support have been denied by both Russia and China. It'll likely be a bit longer before we know the specifics of any help provided, if some kind of aid does eventually materialize from China's direction. From Reuters, protesters march across Sudan as economy spirals. Across the country, Sudanese people have been marching against the military leadership that took over the government last October, and against sharply increasing prices and cratering economic conditions. These protests started on Monday and seem to have been sparked by students in a few key cities. From there, social media helped spread the message and brought out more protesters across the country, many of whom also demanded the release of politicians and citizens who were imprisoned by the military junta when they launched their coup. The protests have been largely peaceful, but government forces have deployed tear gas and stun grenades to keep protesters away from the presidential palace. And from Axios, COVID spike in Europe could signal increase in U.S. A spike in new COVID cases in a half-dozen European countries is ringing alarm bells internationally, especially since these cases are rising at the same time. Hong Kong is experiencing record fatality rates, China is shutting down numerous cities as their infection numbers grow exponentially, and wastewater data collected across the U.S. suggests there might be a new wave of infections stateside soon as well. There's a decent chance that what's happening in China is the consequence of their COVID-0 approach to the pandemic combined with the use of inferior vaccines. And what's happening in Europe is the consequence of a bunch of pandemic rules and mandates coming down all at once, waning vaccine protection, and the spread of what's being called the BA.2 variant of Omicron, which is similar to Omicron, but a bit more infectious. Cases are still dropping around most of the world, though, and while there's a chance this may spiral into something big, there's also a chance it'll turn out to be a series of regional blips caused by those aforementioned variables. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.